So today I want to talk about collections. And I think just to make some room here, we talked about functions briefly. Here's an example. The assignment that I just gave you for Dylan, who's gone, there is a new assignment out on the website, or on the website and in Blackboard. But the assignment doesn't require you to use functions. You may. When I solved it, I used, for some of the extra credit particularly, I used functions. So you can experiment them. What I did discover is that you have to define your functions before you call them, otherwise you get an error. The playground still works if the function is below the code. So if you call it here above and the function's down below, it works, but you get an error saying I can't find the function, but then it still calculates the answer somehow. Seems to work, but if you want to get rid of the red error markers, which is always a good idea, define your functions at the top of your playground, and then you can experiment with them.
You create a separate file with functions and import it?
Probably not. You might be able to into the playground, but normally in the playground, that's not the purpose of a playground. It's helping us learn. In the future, your functions are just part of, kind of like your solution was in Visual Studio, where you have the solution and it's got forms and it's got external files and it's got class files, and you're going to have the same kind of project folder, and your included functions will be in there, and you don't have to do anything. They're just part of the project, and so they just are references. Right. So in the playground, we could maybe find a way to do that, but I don't know that it's worth it, because the playground is for trying code, see if it works the way you want it to. But it's not where you don't normally write programs in the playground.
Yeah.
We will be for this unit, maybe the second unit or third unit, I guess it is. We might be using the playground for those, but once we get past learning syntax, then we'll be developing projects. We don't have to use the playground. You can create a console project in normal iOS development world, not create any GUI stuff and just do a console. But I really like the playground because you get to see as it goes how the steps are coming. You get to see errors pretty quickly. It's a nice little place to play around with syntax particularly. I think it would be awesome in programming logic to put stuff in there and show it and let people try things and see what happens. But I don't think I want to start programming logic off in Swift. We'll save that for some other day. All right, so today we're talking about collections in Swift. Collections are basically arrays and dictionaries. So there's two kinds of collections. They're two different beasts. One is an array of values. And we didn't talk arrays too much in programming logic. We messed with collections a little bit. But an array is just a whole bunch of memory locations, all of the same type. So a whole bunch of strings or a whole bunch of integers or a whole bunch of doubles with one name. And they're indexed. Okay. In Swift, unlike Objective-C, they're mutable, and unlike C#, when you declare an array in C#, you've set its size at 10, and you get 10 elements in the array. In Swift, and I think this is really Swift, in Swift, they're mutable. You're going to add new elements to the array. They're basically collections. They're less arrays. I don't know of any language where arrays you can change the size on the fly. There are ways, but it's painful. Here, it's a piece of cake. You just keep adding stuff. Put it in the middle, put it at the end. The array is mutable. It changes unless you declare it with the let keyword. Then it's a constant, and it's not mutable anymore. So I think this is one thing that Swift's done well. It's not the only thing. There's a number of things we've seen. I know Brittany likes the ... stuff, and I agree. That's pretty cool. The way they're doing arrays here is, to me, the right way to do it. It has them, yes, but not. I don't remember the arrays in PHP. I think you can. I don't remember. I'd have to look. Too many languages in my head. But it's pretty rare. Most of the time, and Nick, you're at advantage over most of the people in the room because you've seen arrays in other languages. Most of these people just got out of programming logic intermediate. All right, so take yourself back to how intelligent you were after programming logic intermediate. That's a big step back for you. But then you'll be at the same level with the rest of these people. What?
Thanks, Paul.
You'll be smarter. You're smarter this week than you were last week too. So anyways, Okay, all that on a recording, just so you can bring it back to haunt me. Arrays are mutable. That's a good thing. It makes them easier to use. There's got to be pictures here somewhere, so let's get to a picture of an array. An array stores multiple values of the same type. Now, that's not always true. In many other curly bracket languages, you can create a collection, which is basically an array that is mutable, and have different type values in them. In Swift, you put a string in an array, then the rest of the array better be a string. Don't try to put an integer in a string array. Yes, sir?
I tried it and it works.
You can put stuff in there?
Yeah.
I wonder what it does.
If you don't declare the array as a string array,
Right.
it seems to work fine. It calls everyone as any object, and so then I think you need to cast everyone.
Oh,
I mean,
yes,
pain in the butt,
yes,
but-
yes. Okay, so you can't, so, all right, now, thank you for that clarification. Thank you for trying that. He declared an array and then threw strings and integers and doubles and more strings and stuff in there. But when you do that, when you pull them out, you have to say, I'm pulling out a string, and you have to typecast everything you pull out of that kind of an array, because what he put in it was just a very generic object. You can't do much with those. So you have to typecast them. Here, what they're basically saying, which is very handy, is that every object in the array is the same type. So when you pull them out, you don't have to tell Swift what type of element it is, because they're all strings or they're all integers. That's normally what happens anyways. A lot of syntax, this stuff is in here for the Objective-C programmers. When you declare an array, you simply declare it with a type. So here's a picture of an array. It's just a bunch of values, all of the same type, and in Swift, they're designated in square brackets. So here we're initializing a shopping list. And we're being explicit, saying notice the square brackets around string? That's an array of strings versus just string, which is one string. This is an array of strings. The array name is shopping list. Each of the elements in the list is called shopping list indexed starting at 0. So shopping list 0, shopping list 1, shopping list 2, and so forth. So this is shopping list 0, this is shopping list 1, this is 2. This is 0, this is 1. And in a second, you'll see how to pull those out. The string here is optional. Because these are strings and we're initializing it at the same time we declare it, it's obvious this is an array of strings, so you could just say, and I think it says this on the next page, shopping list eggs milk. And now we've created a 2-element array of strings for eggs and milk. So I'm just going to duplicate that up here. Let's make a different list though. We'll call it students. And we'll start out in square brackets with Neil and John. And the playground shows me off on the side what's in memory. It's an array, square brackets. You separate the elements with commas, and you can put as many of them in there as you want. In this case, I'm declaring an array and initializing it immediately. If, on the other hand, I want to declare an array and fill it in later, very common. I might ask the user who's in the class, type, and just add them to the array as we go. Then I'd have to declare that a little bit differently, and what you actually end up doing is invoking the constructor of the array class. So I want to declare an array called students, and what's bizarre here is you use equals, an array of strings, parentheses. The parentheses is the constructor, if my syntax is right. It's not, so let's go look it up again. The reason I gave you the assignment, by the way, is we've been dinking around with syntax so long. It's time to do something with it. Many of you have been trying, but to create a program based on some requirements, it adds to your learning process. So I've given you the assignment so you can go in there and dig on it a little bit. Hang on a second. It should be coming up on a page here where it tells me how to initialize at the pen. Oh, that's a little later. Kind of jumped ahead. There's the first element. Iterating. It's coming. I know it is. There it is. Isn't that what I did?
You almost have it right. You made the strings plural.
Ah, thank you. did remember that pretty well. Why they pushed this 7, 8 pages later in the book, who knows? Made sense to them. Maybe because you don't do this very often, but I could see it. Now, if you want to, you can always find out how many elements are in the array. It's a little easier. We learned how to find all the different, how many characters are in a string. But there we had to use a special function, and that was kind of bizarre. Here it's much easier. We just say students dot count. And count is a property, so you don't even need parentheses. And right now there's 0 elements in that array. Each item in the array is referred to as an element. So this is how you declare them empty.
You can also
Go ahead.
declare it as like you did above, or like, you know, say it's a string array, and then just have 2 empty square brackets.
Okay, good. But you need, if you do that, then you need to typecast it. You have to put the type in there. So instead, we're going to do variable students colon an array of strings equals the empty array.
And that's doing the same thing.
They all do. The only thing, this one puts values in it, okay? And you can't simply leave these out because now we have an array of what? Don't know. No, we don't know. Right? We don't know what type. If you leave those names out, that's not legal. Pretty sure. Made a liar out of me. But what type can we put in there? Maybe it'll infer it when I add something. So let's see if I can do that. Students dot append. Now it's not happy. Because this is not a string array and I'm putting a string in that array. NS array does not have a member append. So this isn't really a string array, it's an NS array, which is the next step fancy array, which is generic, and you don't append things to those. So if I do the string thing here, then we should be better off. Actually, let's undo a couple dozen times here, bring everybody's name back. And notice now students does have the append method, and I can add anything I want, like Neil. And if I put that up above here, you can drag, it just takes a little patience sometimes. Now there's one element in the array. So that's 3 different ways that you can declare an array. And there might even be more, but those ought to cover you. This one's pretty common. This one's also fairly common. This is left over for the Objective-C programmers. You call the array constructor. Parentheses make this a constructor. It's a method instead of just a string. Calling a method to instantiate a string array, and students points to it. They all have the same effect, except this one puts 2 values in the array right away. Let's use that as our example. And instead of adding Neil, let's add Green. What I haven't found yet, if any of you find it, let me know. I'm sure it's up there someplace. I haven't dug around too much. Is if I want the playground to refresh itself now, it seems that if you change any command, it seems to refresh itself. But every now and then, like when I brought up my sample program, I couldn't get it to run because I didn't want to change anything. I just want to see the results. No real run button here in the playground.
Because it does make a new line.
That's what I've been doing, but it seems to me like I ought to be able to click on run and make it go, but there doesn't seem to be a run button, and if I have to dig 6 levels in the menu, that's not any better either. So the append function is there. You can append. You can actually append lots of stuff if you wish by appending an array. But you have to put square brackets around it. Or not. Not going to let me do that. Okay? Then let's try this. This is cool and bizarre all at the same time. plus sign allows you to add an element or elements. This is basically taking two arrays and adding them together. Not mathematically, but together. And if that's in any other language, I've never seen it. Very slick.
Works in PHP, I think. Something similar.
I never tried it. Yeah, I don't think you can get away with a plus sign. I don't think you can concatenate arrays. I never tried it.
I've done it for something like that. Maybe it's a dot equals.
Maybe.
Dot equals.
Well, in PHP, dot is appended, so that
Yeah.
seems odd. But anyways, this is pretty cool. You can append a single string, or you can add an array. I don't think we can add just a string. Yeah, that's not quite right. Okay. But I can put square brackets around that and make it a very simple little array. And then it works. Or I can do that append command in. And now I don't have to do anything real special. I just type in the string without the array, and that adds a new element. By the way, once this is a string array, it's a string array, and you can never put anything else in it until the array is released from memory and you don't use it anymore. So this is inside a function, for instance, and then the function ends. The next time you come in, I suppose you could use the same array in that function as an integer when the previous time you used it as a string, but try to come up with a reason to do that. I don't have one. So this is a string array, and if I then try to append a 3 to it, shouldn't pick that name because I just cannot type it. Can't do it. String does not conform to integer, literal, convertible, whatever that means. Sounds like something you drive.
If you put it in quotes.
If I put it in quotes, then we're fine. Right? But it's not the number 3, it's not an integer 3, it's the string with the character 3 inside. That's different. Yes. We can insert. And so we can insert Patrick at index. Remember, we're 0 based. Be careful. I don't think, see, right now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 elements, right? Can I insert him at position 6? I doubt it, because there is no position 6 yet. Really? Turn me into a liar. Appended him at position 6.
What is it?
Because you create position 6 when you add it.
But I didn't add him, I inserted him.
What's it?
Did it insert a blank one before it? Yeah.
All right, let's jump ahead a little bit. How do I walk through the contents of an array? Probably using a for in loop is the easiest way. All right, you can also use a for loop that's indexed. So I could do for 0 dot dot less than, because remember when we're walking through these, there's 0 based. If there's 7 elements in the array, there is no element 7. So here I could do students dot count.
What was the dot thing? 3 dots is
3 dots includes the endpoint, the less than sign does not include the endpoint. So this one will not include the 7. Okay? So that's good. And then in here I can just do a print line. And in here we want to see students sub, oops, for S equals, there we go, students sub S. So S is my loop counter.
And for as in,
Is it?
I believe so.
That's gross. I don't like the way it indents, but that's my problem. And here's my console. So there's 7 because I print line and count, and there's Patrick at the end.
Try putting 10 on there instead of 6.
It's interesting. I can insert on the end, and if I read the book right or the notes right, that didn't seem to work right. Could add them at the end, can't add them beyond the end. It's like it knows where the end is, and instead of appending him, it inserts him. But I can also put him in the middle. Now he's going to show up in the fourth position. I still have 7 items in the list. I didn't expect that. I expected to get an error when I tried to insert him at position 6, because there is no position 6 before I added Patrick.
Maybe behind the scenes, there is a position 6 which says this is the end of the array.
Maybe a null, a nil element saying this is the end of the array, so it replaced that and hopefully tacked the nil on maybe.
Or does it have can you make an array of optional strings?
Never tried it. Question was, in case you didn't make the recording, can you make an array of optional strings and then set some of them to nil? Guess it would be hard to test, though I would have to use one of these techniques to create it. Because if I want optionals, I have to designate the type. I'd have to put that here, colon, string, no, array optional. Legal? Seems to, but now it doesn't like this because this is an array of strings. And this is an array of optional strings, different types. That's why these are failing, because I'm trying to append to that. This append works, the insert works, okay, but these don't. But now I really have to change my code because it's an optional. I can't print a nil. If it's nil, then I have to get into the, if it's nil, print something else, otherwise print the. Looks like the answer is yes, you can do it, but it complicates things a little bit. Okay. What else do we have to know how to do here?
Print line and just students by itself does work.
Really?
It'll output.
Cool. So I don't need my loop? What you're telling me? Well,
It doesn't look pretty, but
right.
Oh, does it list them just straight across?
yeah, like that.
Nice.
Oh, I brought them down.
That comes real handy for debugging to see what's in my array. I wouldn't, like Neil said, it's not pretty. I wouldn't want to display it that way necessarily in the output of my program, but that seems to work. This for loop can also be written as for student in students. That works pretty well. The one thing I struggled with, and let's see if I can make it work here, is what if I want to use the old-fashioned for loop? For s equals 0, semicolon as long as s is less than students dot count, semicolon plus plus s. I did read in the notes that they prefer the plus plus because that increments it first and then returns the value, which really doesn't make a lot of difference in this case, but they recommended that you do that instead. And notice the error that I'm getting. Yeah, but that's not what the error is. Never heard of S. Never heard of S here either. Never heard of student here. Those are fine. But if I use this technique, I have to put the var on here, and then it shuts up. That surprised me. But I don't see using this a whole lot anymore. Why would I go through this nonsense unless I'm incrementing by something other than 1? Right? But I'll bet if I wanted to go down here, I could say s in students.count.0. No, if I wanted to go backwards, I'd have to be a little more careful. But can I do that backwards here? Can I do 6 to 0?
seen a dot there.
Thank you. Guess not.
Bad construction.
Yeah, it doesn't look good. So the dot range thing has to, the triple dots, dot less than has to go up. So this loop still comes in if you're going backwards. So I could do start S, let's do it backwards just so you can see the demo and put that back. -1 is where I have to start. As long as S is greater than or equal to 0, subtract 1 every time through the loop. Now somewhere here they're going backwards. I got so darn many of them can hardly tell, but Neil's at the bottom, working my way back up to Patrick. Did I take some out here?
Just roll to
Neil, John, Reed. Oh, I put Patrick in the middle. That's why. Okay. Better put Brittany in there pretty soon or she's going to get upset. Questions?
Can you sort it?
Can I sort it? Makes sense, doesn't it?
I mean, I'm sure you
I
can.
didn't see it in the book. Looks complicated. Students dot sort students, that doesn't make a lot of sense. There's a sort built in, but it might be an array sort. In C# you have to say array. It's a method of the class. It's an instance. It's not an instance method. It's a class method. And so you have to say array.sort and then which array you want sorted. And so, yeah, I'm sure you probably could, but I haven't figured it out yet. Make that extra credit in the homework assignment. Have you guys figured out? Or we can look it up. You want to try to look it up here real quick? What I'm afraid of is we're going to end up in Objective C.
Bridge to Objective C.
Yep, it's an array method. Mutating function sort is ordered before T. What the heck? Give me an example. Okay. There's my example. What's it saying here? 0 is when I sort two things, what am I going to do? I'm going to look at one and then the other, right? How do I want them sorted? If the first one is less than the second one, sort them.
Can you make that a little bigger?
No. If I can. Now I have to find it again. Okay, so what we're telling the array here is I want them sorted in ascending order, little ones first. So let's try that. Should be able to just say $0, $1. If that's all we have to do, that's pretty darn impressive. And that's not all I have to do.
Because it's not an integer array.
What?
You've got a string array there, not an integer array.
Oh, and I also put a comma, not a less than. Should be able to do that to strings. Guess not. And I'm not terribly surprised. Most languages do not like to anonymous closure argument. What? How's my syntax? Curly brackets. Really? With a space. Would not have expected curly brackets.
That's a function.
That's exactly right. This is a function. In a way. 17 times. And now if I do my print line of students down here,
You don't know what the function is. Doesn't have a name.
that wasn't terribly hard. All right? And if I want them sorted the other direction, I just flip this around.
Pretty interesting, it tells you how many iterations it took to sort.
Yeah, yes. 13 to sort 6 names, right? Or 7 names, whatever we're at here. Well, that tells me it's doing a pretty efficient sort, because a lot of the sorts would go through that 15, 25, 30 times with 7 names to sort stuff out. So it's probably doing a binary modified, not binary,
Bubble sort.
no, it's not bubble.
Wexford?
I forget the name of the sort now. Might be, it's not quick sort. Is that what you said? Thank you.
That's what it
Quick sort. But what the quick sort does is it divides the list in half and figures it's some magic stuff using the power of 2s. And it sorted 7 items using only 13 steps. Right. Be interesting if I added another 100 names to the list, how long it would take. Okay, so sorting wasn't bad. Got to add that to my notes. Not in my notes. Right. And this is what it looks like for all arrays. You just say sort, and then either a less than or a greater than here.
And are you basically, the 0 and the 1 are the index numbers?
But they're temporary index numbers. It's looking at these two, right, and make sure that they're in the right order.
Right, then
Using less than. Then it looks at the next two and make sure they're in the right order. But not only that, the way the binary sort works is it looks at these. It looks at the top one and the middle one. It's not a binary, it's quick sort. But it looks at the top one, it looks at the middle one. Then it looks at the second one and the next one and the next one and the next one. And what happens is the bigger numbers move to the bottom and the smaller numbers move to the top half. Then it takes each half and it sorts it exactly the same way. The middle, until they can't do the halves anymore. And that's why it's relatively quick. All right. But what you're really doing is saying the two numbers I'm comparing, make sure that the first one is bigger than the second. Alphabetically, numerically, whatever.
I noticed on mine, I had a different array set up, but it seems like as with yours and with mine, doing it one way, sorting it from like top to down or top to up, it takes less iterations going one way than it does the other way.
Not necessarily. It's more a function of, is the array already sorted? My array is already reverse sorted. It takes more time to sort an array that's backwards, to put it forwards, than it does to take a random one, because you may get done faster. Say, nope, 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 nope. Well, I think what they're counting there, 17 times, maybe how many switches they did? Maybe.
Yeah, because if you sort it and then you sort it in the opposite direction, that should be the one.
It's about as bad as it can get, right?
Yeah.
You can also switch.
But what happens if I then come down here and add a space? Will it sort it again and still do 17 times? Interesting. I wouldn't think the number would be the same because it's already sorted. But even when it's already sorted, you tell an array to sort, it still has to go through and analyze each pair and make sure they're in the right order. So it does take some
Sort it
steps.
again after that, I'm gonna, like, you run the same command again, I'll be curious to see.
Mine did take 6 times.
They'll reverse the order. in the
6.
second one.
Does it matter? No. Who cares how many times it is? I don't really care. How many other languages, tell you how many times they did the sort or how many switches they made or any of those? They don't. That's just part of this feature of, it's interesting, of the playground here. But the quick sort divides the list in half and it sorts them across the halves, and then it takes the halves and sorts those until they can't make halves anymore. And it's an interesting little algorithm that uses recursion and all kinds of stuff, and it's what the PhDs have figured out is the most efficient. And this may not even be a quick sort, it may be a modified quick sort, who knows. But the good news is we don't care. It just does it for us, I'm guessing, as efficiently as possible. One other thing we can do with arrays, let me bring up my notes here real quick, is remove items. And I don't have any shortcuts in here yet, so I gotta do all the scrolling. And what? Where's the rest of my stuff? I put a whole lot more than that in. I must have forgot to post it on the web. What? Maybe I didn't document it? No, I put a lot more than that in. I hope I didn't lose it. All right, we can remove items from the list. We can remove all. We can remove last, which removes just the last one. Why would they provide you that? Because normal, how do you know where the last one is? You have to do the array.count -1 to find out where the last one is, particularly if your program is dynamic and it's changing. This keeps you from having to do that. So that's convenient if you're removing the last one.
We call an index of -1. They'll give you the last.
Well, yeah, you can index, but then you have to say students.count -1, and that account has to be analyzed, and then it has to subtract 1 versus last, and it probably figures it out quicker. But we want to remove at index. The downside to this is you have to know what the index is of the one that you want to remove. Right? In many other languages and in other kinds of collections, you could say remove Patrick, and it would pull Patrick's name out of the array wherever it is. But here we have to remove it an index, and it looks like I don't even know where anybody is anymore. We'll just remove person number 2, and whoever it was is gone. Reen. No, Reen's at the beginning. Nick's gone. You were an index 2, it's not my fault. After sorting. Go ahead.
If, say the GUI has just the name and it returned the name to the code that the user selected, would you run a for or a count loop or whatever, some sort of loop to just count through until it hits, until that index is,
And then you remember the index and remove it.
is that what
You
you
know, but there may also be, well, this is remove at, and I don't know if there's a remove, you know, there were lots of removes here. Remove all, remove at, remove last. I guess not. That's the 3. So there's no remove by name. But you could write your own function to walk through and say as soon as you find Justin, return the index and then use that index to remove.
Or it might appear twice though.
Well, then you can write a loop that continues to go until it hits the end.
is there
Right.
like a, can you do like a find an array, like students that? I don't know.
In most languages, it would be insert or index of. I don't see it. Or find, filter, interesting.
Search.
Not yet. That would be handy, wouldn't it? It's a good exercise. Maybe we'll make that assignment number 1. Since there wasn't one, we'll go backwards and make it assignment number 1. Write a index of function. Or write a search function, or write a remove all function that removes all Justins.
If it's a, if you wanna try it, it's just on a separate line, it's just find, parenthesis, the name of your array, comma, and then in quotes what you're looking for.
Okay, so it's not a method of the instance, it's a method of the class. So you said find a string, find an array, so I'm gonna put students in here, and then what I wanna find?
Yes.
Okay. But what does that give me? Some 0, whatever that means.
I mean, it's 0.
Are you at index? Oh, you are at index 0. Okay, so I'll say variable index equals find, and let's find John. Cool.
Would there ever be an instance where you would want to remove everything from an array but keep its capacity, because there's a keep capacity thing?
I can't come up with it. I personally
just-
don't know why I would do that unless I was doing the high temperatures of the month assignment that I gave you, and I wanted to have 31 days and use the same array for every month over and over and over again. Instead of building it with append as I go, have it be empty and just fill the numbers in. But I can't imagine that append is so inefficient when I'm doing 31 elements of an array that leaving the elements there is more efficient than just wiping them all out and putting them in again.
It works like a list in C sharp. C sharp, if you create a list, every time you add it, it actually adds like, it will double the size of the list. And then it keeps adding them until it's full, and then it doubles the size.
But these, if I understand the mutables right, you add things, it doesn't double, it just adds 1. And when you remove them, it takes that out. There's no nil value. And in the C sharp list class, which is similar to an array, when you remove stuff, it doesn't physically remove the element from the array, it just nils it out. And it's still there. And when you count, it's still there. And when you index through, it still sees it. Here, I find this much more powerful. We can add, remove, and the size is dynamic as we go. So no, I don't know why I would want to keep the elements, the capacity of my array. So there's an index in addition to find. What else can we do? You were probably looking in.
It said with the find, the reason it's sum or something is that because it's optional, so you have to be prepared to handle nil.
Okay, because it might not be there.
Right.
So my index here is actually a nullable index. So if I'm looking for Volker, I get nil. So now if I want to display that index or use that index, I have to use the nullable thing. Right, but you can throw this in an if statement. You can say if var index or let index equals find, and if it doesn't work, then it skips over it with an else. Okay. That's one of the techniques that they showed quite a bit, is you can do something like this. If let index equal find students Volker. If that's true, then we can say print line found Volker at index. Otherwise, we can say print line didn't find it.
Apparently also, if you remove an item in a array that does not have optional types, it just moves everything over.
That's the reason not to use the optional types, because if it doesn't move everything over, then you've got a blank spot in the middle. But I'll bet it, even if you set it to nil, that's different than remove. If you remove an element, even if it's nil, it'll remove it, is my guess, versus setting it to nil, which just says I got a placeholder, put nothing in there right now.
It does appear that it doubles the size like the list class would, because there's a capacity variable. I have a count of 5 and a capacity of
Count of 5 and a capacity of
8.
8.
So when it got to 4, it
Okay, so it is doubling. That's pretty common when you ask for more space.
Yeah.
It doesn't just give you enough one byte. It sounds like even here, it's not giving you just 1 byte or 1 string's memory at a time. It says you want more. Okay, we're just going to take the array and double it. That way you can add more as often as you want until you fill it. And then when you add 1 more, it doubles it again. That's pretty common. Sounds like what's going on behind the scenes here then too, but by using his capacity. So this is the technique that I've found a couple of times now. This is a nullable variable. if your function returns potentially nil, this catches it. If it's nil, it jumps down to the else. If it's not nil, then index contains the return value that you can process inside there. So it's a very quick way to process nullables. What else? Yes, ma'am.
How do you do 2D arrays?
2D arrays?
They're scary.
What are
I would create an array of arrays. I haven't looked at it. I don't remember it in the
Another
book
set of
just yet.
brackets around it.
Pardon me?
We add another set of square brackets.
Yeah, it probably looks a little like, well, okay.
Because I looked already.
You looked
Well,
already.
It's just the assignments should be.
Let me see if I can do this.
2D
Or
array or dictionaries, apparently
2D
dictionaries are different
equals
something.
an array of arrays.
Comma between them.
Now I have a 2D array. Okay, looks interesting. I can probably print line that. But then how do I pull something out? Print line 2D, 2 square brackets, probably 0. Let's do 1 comma 1.
I'll give you a 6.
Oops. That's very old syntax. So that says give me element number 1, that's this element. And in there, that's an array. I expect it to be an array. Give me the 1 element from there. That's how I got the 7. And if you were, boy, if you were declaring it in a normal way, you know, if I want to declare a variable something as an array of string arrays,
Yep. Nope,
no?
nope, you don't have to put the second string.
How do I know it's an array of arrays then?
Close out with the 2 brackets. Bracket, bracket, string, bracket, bracket.
Really?
Yep.
Wow, that's funky.
Because they all have to be strings.
Well, how could you do an array of integers other than arrays?
That's the answer to your question. The questions can go on forever. When you need it, you figure it out. How did I figure it out?
You can actually say probably just
Googled it.
Then you have to probably.
Apparently, also when you remove from an optional array, it does.
Why are you so hung up on these optional arrays?
I just want to know how it works.
Okay, go for it. But I'm not going to document it in mine. Document it in your programmer notes. All right.
If you remove from an optional array, it still moves things over.
Yeah, when you remove everything, the element itself is removed and everybody else is pushed up. And that, when I was young like you, that was an exercise in array manipulation. Write your own remove routine that pushed everything else up. Unfortunately, when you pushed everything else up, you ended up with an empty element at the end because an array always has the same size. Well, what if you ask for 100 and you need 101? You rewrite the program. You recompile it with 110 or 105 or whatever it is you want. It's like in Access, when you ask for a string or a text variable of size 25, the first time you try to type something in there, it's 26, you get an error message. How do you fix it? Go into the design, make it 30 or whatever you want to make it. Today, we get a lot more flexibility. But yeah, remove to me says remove the element completely versus equals nil, which says leave the element, but take out its value. Yes, sir.
How do you find what the actual element is at a specific index? Did we cover that yet?
Yes.
Did I miss it?
This says, remember S is going from 0 to 6 through that. So you put it in square brackets.
Right, but if you don't want to use print line, is there another way, like just to find it in the,
Same way. If I wanted to pull something out, for instance,
so if you want to put it in a variable, you would just. Oh, okay.
and the 0 can be a student is not a variable yet, so there we go. This can be a variable in here, or literal, or whatever you want it to be. So that's how you pull out an individual element. But typically, how do you know that you want element 0? How do you know that you want element 6? Usually you're doing something else like a find first, and here's my index, right? This index, however, is only available to this if statement. So down here, I couldn't use index because of the way I did this. And if I'm going to check to see where did I find it, and here I did it too, right? Instead of Volcker here, I could do this. I hope, yep. And now it changes the name. So whatever name I fill in up here, this find said find Neil, now I want to find John, it changes it and it even changes the message. So it's just square brackets, and down here, as we saw, if you want to get to a 2-element or a 2D array, that's actually it's a 2D array. If you need a 2D array, you just use 2 sets of square brackets and designate which index you want. What if I want to walk through and display all of them? Nested for loops. And actually, I think there's a way to do it with a simple for loop, and it was in the instructions someplace, but that's a little beyond what we're going to worry about here. If I do it to you, it's because I'm mean. Let's stop there. That'll give you a little bit of time today to start on your project if you wish. Next Wednesday is lab. The following Monday, we'll continue with our analysis of syntax by taking a look at classes. Don't know how well that's going to play in the playground. If it works well, then we'll use it. Probably have to define the class first, but I haven't done that, haven't looked at it yet. So before Monday the 8th, is that what it was? Whatever that day is, you probably should be doing a little research and updating your journals on classes and how to create them and how to do methods and members and properties and constructors and all those kinds of things that you gave me to say this is what we need to know. What I like about this technique is I think you're getting a very nice handle on what it takes to learn a new language. My notes for this unit have gotten fairly long already because here's all the stuff. And then this book gives me a lot of information that maybe I didn't need to know. And it's missing a lot of information I would have liked to know, like how do I sort, how do I find? It's in here, it's not there right away. Just I'm sure it's in here. What we also haven't talked about yet is dictionaries. Those are key value pair arrays, basically. And instead of numbers, you use indexes. You can still use numbers, but you use an index. And so this creates an array, this creates a dictionary where the key is a string and the value is a string. The key is TYO, the value is Tokyo. The key is DUB, the value is Dublin. Very powerful arrays. Very useful for looking stuff up if you know key values instead of numbers. So I could use key values of student IDs and names. And if I know your ID, I can say, give me student number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and it'll pull the matching value out. Interesting thing about dictionaries is you need to be able to, if you're pulling stuff out, often you need to be able to handle nil, because what happens if there is no key 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8? I'm finding this book is pretty well written because it introduces these nullable variables because they come up every so often where you need them. So it introduces them, and initially my thought was, but as you get further and further in, a lot of things can be nullable and nil, and you got to be able to deal with them. So it's nice to be able to understand that. So it's really a pretty good book. I promise to be quiet, so let's do it.